Persona is my favorite franchise, plain and simple. If you want an objective review, you're gonna have to look elsewhere. However, if you want a review of someone who thinks 140 hours is a reasonable amount of time to spend playing Persona 5 Royal, you came to the right place. So in my opinion, is Persona 5 Scramble, a spin-off made by somebody else entirely, any good? Well, I'm going to talk about it based on the three facets of all my reviews: gameplay, graphics and performance, and story. Going in, I didn't expect a ton from a Dynasty Warriors style game in terms of story. Hell, even Age of Calamity left me wanting more because of how segmented the story is. But Scramble is way different. While it can be a little bit convoluted at times, it delivers a solid narrative that is pretty much indistinguishable from a mainline game. Honestly, it feels like the next chapter of vanilla Persona 5, picking up around about 6 months after the true ending. The game doesn't worry about catching up new people either. It might be a little confusing if you've forgotten some of the main story beats of the first game, because it assumes you remember everything and are locked, cocked, and ready to rock. For context, I've only played about 10 hours so far, taking me to the first boss fight of the game. In that short time, the game has made me genuinely tear up. I don't want to spoil too much of the story, but the concept of reuniting with the friends you made after the bittersweet ending of the first game is genuinely touching, especially since you get to hear how everyone has moved on in their lives. Because this game is a little smaller in scope, the explanations of the new metaverse mechanics can be a little complicated at times. Honestly, I swear they add in characters saying the line, "That's logical," to distract from the fact that, no it isn't. Some of this doesn't make sense, and yet I love it anyway.
That does explain things.
There's plenty of mystery, and while it can feel like a rehashing of the same basic storyline of the first game, it still delivers on new ideas and characters well enough to satiate my narrative hunger. Sophia is an interesting addition to the Phantom Thieves, and while she can be a little on the bland side, she's still fun enough not to take away from the other cast members. From there, let's pivot to performance. I'm playing this on Switch, my custom Persona Switch, by the way, meaning it's going to be a little worse than the PS4 and PC versions. That said, the game maintains a solid frame rate while docked with no slowdowns and is visually indistinguishable from Persona 5 running on my PS4. I'm not the world's biggest graphics snob, so I can't speak to the fidelity or resolution for those who prefer the most premium of experiences. That said, for the general public, the game is pretty wonderful. The art style also lends itself very well to the Switch's hardware. Unsurprisingly, the animated cutscenes are still beautiful. They stand up to the Persona quality and are once again indistinguishable from the base games. I thought that maybe they would be a little bit fewer and further between, but no, it's pretty much identical in terms of frequency. There are some issues that I do have, however. For starters, maybe this is just me, but the character models seem a little off from where they were in Persona 5 and in Royal. Everyone looks like they're composed of about 2/3 legs, except for Makoto, who they made look like a mom in a Pixar movie. Transition screens are also a little weird. Before, black shapes outlined in red would appear when the Phantom Thieves entered the metaverse that would take over the screen, fading to black. Scramble does something similar with these transition circles, but it just kind of looks like circles appear, then the screen goes black. Look, I know it's nitpicky, but as a superfan, I did notice. My biggest issue, however, is the loading time on Switch. I've seen the side-by-side comparisons with other consoles, so I know this is unique to Switch, but damn, the loading screens can be long. It's not the worst, and the longest I've waited is maybe 30 seconds, but still, it's not ideal. All in all, my complaints are pretty minimal. Sure, this might not run the world's best, but it is definitely not the worst. Finally, let's talk gameplay, where we see the biggest changes from the base game. The most prominent alteration is the way this game handles combat. Considering Persona is a turn-based battle series, the transition to action-oriented combat is pretty seamless. Honestly, it just feels right. I prefer turn-based battle systems, don't get me wrong, but if the series used this combat as a staple from here on out, I wouldn't complain too much. The developers did a good job of integrating the mechanics of Persona with the Dynasty Warriors gameplay in a marriage that works better than I previously imagined. I mean, this warrior-style combat even makes sense in fiction. Joker and the Phantom Thieves are constantly shown in animated cutscenes to be surrounded by mobs of shadows, so fighting a horde of enemies as opposed to 1 to 4 is technically more narratively cohesive. The main issue I have is how quickly these battles are resolved, but there really isn't a great solution to that. The battles in mainline Persona games are mind games, and on the higher difficulties, certain boss fights can take well over an hour. I mean, the Akumura boss fight in the original literally has a 1-hour timer, and I failed in one playthrough due to the countdown. These last about 5 minutes tops, which makes victories feel slightly more hollow, but that might just be personal preference. Persona, however, isn't only about the combat. The social links are omitted too, this time replaced with a general bond system that is a lot more basic. Rather than getting buffs from developing your relationships with individual NPCs, you instead get a point allotment from completing significant story beats that, quote, enhance your bond with your team. You then can use those points towards different buffs, each with a varying point value. It works, but it's not ideal. Oh, and any NPC that isn't a Phantom Thief or directly necessary to the story isn't there, including Igor. So there's that too. You do, however, get to roam around Ganganjaya and Shibuya. At first I thought they had made a mistake in some of the architecture, but in actuality they just truncated the environment and start you in a slightly different location. It's a pretty faithful rendition and it's fun to explore. The day countdown system is a little different too. Gone are the restrictions on your daily events. Now you are free to come and go from the jail as you please. No longer have to worry about completing everything by the end of the month because time is not spent the way it was in the first game. Instead, like with every RPG ever, time kinda moves when the story does. The lack of deep and complex social links is a bit of a bummer, but honestly it's a fine trade-off from everything else you get in this game. All in all, I am loving my time with this game. It's an easy recommendation for anyone who played the original, but you might be significantly lost if this is your first outing. Everything considered, I rate this a strong 4 out of 5. Are any of you playing Scramble? I genuinely enjoy getting to talk to people about this, so please let me know in the comment section down below what your thoughts are. And hopefully, if I convinced anybody to pick this up, let me know that too. But, like we always say around here, I hope to see you around sometime.
I lack a heart. That's why I don't understand the logic of the Phantom Thieves.
Oh, well that's my problem.